really angry about now is you've just pressed record. I'm so savage.
No, it's great. Like the legend of it will live in my mind forever.
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
absolutely fantastic.
Why weren't NWA all white Scottish guys? I mean,
Did you not
you know.
hear? Did you not hear the tale? Now there's a tale. I'm going to try and find it. There was a tale many years ago about a Scottish rap group who tried to make it big. They were actual like professional rappers and stuff like that. And they tried to make it big in America. And Americans just like, no, we're not interested because you're Scottish. There's no way you're going to meet the demographics. So they pretended to be from California or something like that. And they ended up like getting a big lucrative contract. They ended up kind of breaking up. I'm gonna try Scottish rappers.
Did they sound very
well?
Scottish?
They didn't at the beginning. They did at the beginning, obviously.
Yeah, but they always wanted to rap about the Highlands or haggis, and so that should have given them away.
The Scottish rap duo pretending to be. This is a really, really fascinating.
Instead of the Bloods and the Crips, it was the McGregors.
It was called. They were actually called Syllable and Brains. And there was an actual
Syllable
and there was
Brains.
a TV documentary called The Great Hip Hop Hoax. And it was a documentary film where they have them kind of going back to their days when they basically Syllable in the Brain, and they tried to get a record deal, and basically the American, was it R&R? A&R companies were like, no, you'll never catch it because you're good. But as soon as they find out you're from Scotland, they'll just be like, well, you've not got the kind of the background, the South Central
Heritage.
Los Angeles background to basically
the street
do it.
cred? Yeah. Are you saying? What I know of Glasgow is that it can be rough. Like
different sort of rough. I think.
Eminem. They ended up on a couple of times. They ended up in kind of like kids' TV over here, kind of because they were wild and crazy. They just kind of went. They were kind of like. I think it was round about the time. It wasn't too round about the time, but they weren't too far off of Beastie Boys. Because remember, there was a big. Well, you won't remember, but there was the big, huge thing about the Beastie Boys kind of being like, it was the satanic panic. It was the hip hop satanic panic, and they were caught up of kind of like doing what they were doing and then being absolutely kind of ridiculous. So,
well, the Beastie Boys are an interesting story because they started as a punk band. They always just wanted to be a band, and they found the sound that they wanted. And
I know a lot of the lyrics to Paul's Boutique. Just because it's really, really difficult it's always really, really difficult to rap it because you've got three people. So you've got and they always take parts. So even in the more trickier parts, it's like, I met this girl last night with peculiar cackle. I laid the bait and she took to tackle. Had too much to drink at the Red Lobster. Now the room is spinning round like the blades of a helicopter. Never met a girl who wasn't finicky. If the press had the way, then they're going to finish me. You might know this. You never witnessed me. I ate spinach because I'd be called Spinach D. I shed light like I'd shed fur. Run around town like Raymond Burr. I'm so high, you call me your highness, but if you ever know me, then pardon my shyness. I live in the village wherever I go, I walk to. I keep my friends around me, so I have someone to talk to. I like music loud. It's got clout to it, and it's a trip. It's a funky beat, and I can bug out to it. But I learned all that.
Clearly,
Paul's Boutique was just an album.
Clearly,
I'm glad that one's made it into the recording.
It's fantastic. But there's a certain cadence to. It's not exactly iambic pentameter, but there's a certain cadence to Beastie Boy lyrics that they like to. It
always absolutely baffles me why they get the kids learning Shakespeare, but they never get the kids kind of learning like Eminem, what Eminem does or anything like that. Some of the stuff that he does. Apart from the fact that obviously you could say, well, it's fairly kind of offensive, but there is stuff that he does, which...
Well, I went to school on 8 Mile, actually.
No, you didn't. No
so, way. I did. I went to an all-boys high school in Detroit on 8 Mile.
That's amazing. Did you shed the accent? Is this like The Departed? We're kind of going to sit here and say, you had one accent when you were with your mum and one accent when you were with your dad. You did, didn't you?
So Detroit, 8 Mile is the cutoff for Detroit city limits. And all through the 80s, it was the most segregated municipality in the United States. And so you'd have white neighborhoods and you have black neighborhoods, and yeah. And so to be a civil servant for Detroit, which still is the largest city by landmass in the United States, as far as covering whatever, and if you include the extended metro, it's just enormous. Like, I drove 35 minutes to get to high school, and that was at highway speeds.
Jeez.
The average commute for someone in the city of Detroit is 55 minutes one way at 85 miles per hour, which is the average speed.
There's no need for that. That's just outrageous. That's absolutely outrageous.
Well, it happens when you have a industry that says infrastructure is bad. And the story of why there's no infrastructure in the United States really starts with the automotive industry, and no place has been more affected by the automotive industry.
Detroit.
I always like these things. So you get these kind of entrepreneurs. Occasionally, you see one every kind of 18 months they're going, what we need to do to free up the cities is we need to basically stop getting everybody in their individual cars, and we need to build like some kind of really big car and have lots of people going them at the same time. So when people leave at 5 o'clock,
you mean like a bus?
It always goes to the headline. It's like,
like the things everywhere else outside of America has. Yeah, the buses and the trains and trams and
American entrepreneur invents bus. It's like a bit of train. If only we had some way of transporting goods back and forward on some kind of metal track that didn't need kind of lots of individual trucks. Oh, you mean freight train?
Yeah, but it can't be a train because that's 2 tracks. So let's have a monorail.
We've not done an intro. We better do an intro.
Yeah.
I think we better. I'm gonna. The funny thing is that
you dropped Beastie Boys. What more of an intro do you need?
Yeah, you don't need to do that anymore. I feel like we've arrived already.
So welcome to. I was going to say, Wizards with Attitude. We get it out in the open. Yeah, you might know that.
The WWA reference.
Exactly.
But we're not wizards.
Welcome to We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'm with... And I'm also with... He's back.
Seppy.
He's
from Fighting a Box.
I think you're officially... I already said you were a repeat offender last time. But I do...
Oh, I love it here. I love the talking to two of you so much. It is like... World of Warcraft made it so I no longer feel like I have online friends or do things friends. I just have friends. And now it has sort of raised my standards for real life people. Like, why are we just sitting here? Why aren't we doing the thing, creating a thing, building a channel? Like, why aren't we doing a thing?
The best thing about it was I was having a chat with one of my kind of friends. Kind of more online than real life. I met him a couple of times in real life. But it was cool. You got to the point where it's like, this conversation's finished. So rather than having to sit around and wait until one or other feigned death, I was just like, you just like go, right, okay, gotta go. I'll catch you later. I've got, other things to do. There's not that awkward thing. You can have little snippets of kind of like conversation, then you can kind of like disappear. And that is one of the few things I like about being online, is that you can have a catch up with somebody. And there's not like this event. I mean, there's a I have real life friends which I meet obviously through the board game club, but we generally talk online when we're not at the board game club because it's easier than getting on the phone or, I think that was one of the things with the pandemic, is that it forced us all into a Discord. So we all ended up in a Discord, and the Discord's just remained open, and it's not like one of these things we publicize or push out. It's just people that we know. We all get together, we have a chat, and then we can kind of catch up.
Do you have any awkward online behaviors? And I have to ask Luke if I've done this. Like, I've been pointed out for this one. In a meeting, I will say goodbye and immediately disconnect. And people find that extremely awkward.
I like that.
No.
Yeah. No, because I do so many like work calls like that, and I want it to be just like no awkwardness. Just boom, done, cool, off we go. Carry on about your day.
This is why we get along, Lou. Because I must have done this to you, and you're like, "Well, he's got it."
I like the cut of that guy's jib.
What about you, Rick? Any awkward like online communications that like we have the opposite here in Minnesota, which is the Minnesota goodbye, and this is obviously my reaction to this. I'm not going to be caught up in the 45-minute goodbye.
I'm just genuinely quite awkward. I think it's because of like there's a mild. I'm kind of many ingredients. I've got a kind of a, I guess a kind of a baseline ADHD with a. As I'm getting told as I'm getting older by both of my kids, is like there's definitely a mild amount of autism kind of going on there, because I don't think you would say half the things that you would say because you don't seem to have.
Well, self-regulating
don't have
and like where that is on the spectrum.
I don't think anybody. I don't know. We no longer have somebody that's completely not kind of floating about the kind of the rainbow. I think in some ways we're all a little bit kind of. We're all a little bit friendly with Dorothy.
I definitely realised I have aspects of ADHD without question. This whole room is like a shrine to a big chunk of ADHD and not being able to stick to one thing, you know, and
one of the
having that like butterfly kind of like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. And being obsessed about that thing for 5 minutes before I'm obsessed about that thing for 5 minutes, you know, kind of thing.
That's the easily identifiable part of ADHD. But the one that people don't realize is one that Richard had already like demonstrated is the constant soundtrack that you have going on in your head. Like it is a real like, hey, if you're wondering if you have ADHD, despite, you know, you might not have any of the common symptoms, one of the ones that is hard to nail down is, do you have an internal like soundtrack of music going on at any one moment all the time?
I wouldn't say I have something similar, but that's not because I'm not a music person. But I will relate almost every situation in life that's of any note to a quote or a part in a movie or a TV show. You know, in my head, I'll be like, there'll be a Friends quote will come up, or a Jurassic Park quote will come up, or a this or a that. Everything. Me and my friends have always said that there's a Red Dwarf quote for everything funny that happens in life. Anything or anything mildly amusing, even tragic, you'll find a Red Dwarf quote that just goes.
My favorite one, my favorite Zoolander. I always use the one with Zoolander. See when somebody uses like a complicated word or something like that, where they go, do you know what I mean? I've been absolutely just embellished this today, and I just look at them and go, you can read minds, like, and that's just like, it's just a bit. It's just like my thing is like movie. I will watch movies, or I can watch a movie, and then it's got to the point where it's kind of like I do this annoying thing. We watch occasionally when myself and my wife will chill out and we'll watch a film, and I guess what's going to happen in the film just as a throwaway thing, and I'm always kind of like, oh, he's gonna.
And she hates it.
You guess it out loud.
I just go.
Oh, you savage! I'd rip your head off. You know, because I do it too, but I managed to keep it in my head. You know, I did exactly the same thing with the movie we're watching today. I was like, that guy's a bad guy. He's definitely a bad guy. And I nearly went to Elliot like, I don't trust. And I went,
I just went,
don't do
no,
it.
that one. I was like, they're definitely going to die, or they're going to end up holding each other in the end, or no, she's not. She's got a complicated past. And every single time we'll kind of get to that point, my wife will turn around to me and go, you need to fuck off. She doesn't say that.
She's right.
But that's fine.
But that being said, we have this internal dialogue or soundtrack that produces behavior, but also linking those 2 points earlier, the environments that create artists, right? So if we're back to 8 Mile, we have Detroit, which has a long history of music and then has a long, complicated relationship with poverty and race, and an era like Detroit was the city of the future in the 50s. And so it got straddled with all the problems of maintaining infrastructure because the suburbs wanted none of it.
Right.
And so the municipality, like, why did it keep on failing? One of the reasons is it had to keep up the entire metro's infrastructure cost while having an entirely shrinking income base because of white flight. So, yeah.
Am I right in
Like,
thinking Motown came out of Detroit?
yeah,
it did.
absolutely.
Right. Like I said, music's not my thing, but I was pretty sure.
That's kind of interesting because, and it ties in quite nicely to one of the things I was wanting to mention, which is I have started reading Absolute Batman after there's been a fanfare of, well, on my sock meds about Absolute Batman. And Absolute Batman is basically like, I don't know if you read.
Is this
It's
new
very,
or an
very
old one?
new. It's literally out within the last
okay.
kind of couple of weeks.
The latest Batman, right?
It's the new universe, the new DC universe is
pretty
the
much.
Absolute universe.
It's kind of like they're going to be running it
Oh,
kind
is
of
it?
like Absolute Batman.
Why is it called Absolute? What's
It's
the logic
kind of
behind
like,
that?
well, it's kind of
Phrasing.
interesting because it's like, what happens if the background circumstances regarding a character's origin was vastly different? How would that affect the kind of character they are? And in the Batman one, which I've just started reading, Absolute Batman, he's not son of millionaire or billionaire Thomas Wayne. He's son of teacher Thomas Wayne. And so basically he ends up being, it's like, what would happen if Batman had exactly the same drive, exactly the same ambition, exactly the same requirement to kind of like need and thirst for kind of justice and making the world a safer place, except have him starting at the bottom. And he went away and he did all the training that he did and everything like that, and studied and everything like that. And
how did he afford it?
I was going to say, doesn't that get rid of his only superpower, the incomprehensible wealth?
I think what it gets,
Isn't
it kind of moves it back into kind of what would you do if he became like kind of not a made man because he's not rich, but just kind of stayed in the same social kind of the bottom social standing, became Batman and kind of fought for Gotham City as like literally somebody who doesn't wake up in the morning, doesn't have the problem about how's he going to get something to eat. So it's kind of, it's very, very interesting.
So it's Batman if he was Arrow.
Yes.
Or Daredevil.
Yeah,
well, no,
because at least he's got a superpower.
No.
Yeah, he does. That he got from Toxic Waste. The two other Absolute titles that just hit are the Absolute Superman and Absolute Wonder Woman.
Oh, I'm intrigued as to Superman because I don't. DC's never been my jam. I mean, like I'm a Marvel expert. I'm absolutely not, but I like Marvel more. I'm intrigued as to what they do with Superman because I always hated Superman. It was always too. Superman seemed. I'm about to say this and realize the irony in it. Too far fetched. Yet Hulk is not far fetched, apparently, in my head.
Well, potentially, you see yourself as a
Superman was
Hulk.
always too much.
I mean, that's what you see.
Well, no, but I mean Thor and everything, but I mean, like Superman, I was always just like, well, he's a god. It's just he can do anything. And then I was like, but a little green crystal is like,
I think
ruined.
What they're doing with Superman. What they're doing with Superman is that
Superman?
he
I'm
grows up on Krypton and comes to Earth. Basically, the destruction of Krypton happens 20 years later. So he grows up on Krypton basically with his father's, I think his father's and his mother's influence. And so when he comes to Earth, he's basically full of grief for the planet of Krypton and everything that it could be. And it's how he channels his grief to become the symbol that he's meant to be. I think
that
sounds intriguing.
That is good because there's been so many interpretations of Superman in pop culture lately, from All Might in Hero Academia to One Punch Man, which is like Luke Superman. Like, I'm a god. I can just do this in one
Homelander,
punch.
Homelander in
Homelander,
Boys,
of course. Like, being the most.
What's the Invincible guy? Is it Omega Man or something like that? Is he?
Yes, Invincible.
Omega? Yeah. Is it Omega Man?
Good job.
I think so.
Luke.
I'm just I'm interested. But and Wonder Woman, apparently she's not raised on Themyscira, but she's brought up in hell apparently. I've not read that much into it. I picked up
So it's Wonder Woman, but she's 5'4",
yeah,
not 6'2",
yeah.
and an Amazonian.
She doesn't like this. She doesn't like the sunlight. You know what I mean? She's a bit crispy. She's a bit crispy around the edges. You know, she doesn't like pomegranates. I mean, whatever kind of other kind of popular culture. But
oh, you just made me think of something I want to talk about. Actually, I want to know if Seppy's seen it.
But I started reading. I got it today, and I started reading Absolute Batman, and I'm just like, oh, there's a couple of bits where you go, oh, and I haven't kind of done that about. I read the Batman Metal series, and it was kind of like, oh, this is a really, really good idea, and you've got the Batman who laughs and stuff like that, and it was really, but it ended up getting into such a convoluted way of trying to kind of deliver a story that it was kind of like, well, how can they possibly get out of this kind of thing? And in the end they do. It's because somebody went, oh, he's allergic to toothpaste, take that, bad guy, and he's plaque, you know, that kind of thing, as normal. Whereas this
Gingivitis.
my gingivitis will take over the world.
My nemesis.
Not with this. Not with this. It would take some mouthwash, you foul fiend. But anyway, Batman Metal, I think it's one of these things that's like, I think sometimes with comics, when they have a run of comics, they have a really, really good idea at the beginning. And sometimes they often fail to finish that idea to a satisfactory conclusion, which is, I sometimes think that's what happens with some of the manga stuff, that they just keep it going because because there's no point you can finish it. And it's the same with like all these kind of Netflix kind of series. They don't know when they're going to finish, but apparently keep cancelling kind of Netflix things.
Well, the one I want to talk about is just cancelled.
I want to talk about beginnings and endings after Luke brings up his topic. But I put on these lights to remind myself that I want to talk about beginnings and endings, so don't forget. But Luke,
I'm just imagining your internal mind palace looks like some beautiful candlelit room of all of the things Seppy's just thought about. Like, oh, I want to talk about that. Oh, I want to talk about that. Oh, it's just like
it's true. It's a little martial arts. It's a joke, isn't it? Called this.
Three people with mild ADHD
it's a little
walking to a pub.
I'm not gonna lie.
So, what I wanted to talk about was my traveling entertainment while I was on the way back and forth from Essen was Netflix show Chaos.
Have
you watched it?
Jeff Goldblum.
I watched it because it was Jeff Goldblum and it was about Greek mythology. So I was just like, well, it's two of my most passionate, loved things in the world, because Jeff Goldblum is just such a beautiful human being, and I thought this would be fantastic. And I love Greek mythology.
I've watched the first 20 minutes because we're watching Prison Break, which goes on forever.
Oh, something fresh.
My goodness,
something fresh and new.
It goes on. It's like me trying to make a point about anything. It's like it could be a six episode series, and it's like when does the first season finish? It's like episode 22, and you've still got like 5 to go. And have they broken out of prison yet? No, because it's like watching a sloth trying to make a sandwich. It's just so slow. Everything.
And we're gonna get back to beginnings and endings. We're gonna get back because this is all about it. I feel like it's all like, I have not watched it yet. Do they have actual magical powers, or is it just corporate, like money is magical?
No. They absolutely do have magical powers. Yes, I think you could absolutely love Chaos, Seppy. It's really modern. It's really like with the kind of the way, the sort of newer world we live in, with all the understanding of like gender and trans and everything like that. There's so much of it now in the culture we consume in TV and stuff. It often feels quite forced in. It's like they're trying to tick boxes. They're not doing it from any kind of we want to do this. We're going like, oh, we need to do this, and we need to tick this, and blah blah blah.
Well, they're taking scripts that are old and trying to force these things into.
Yeah, and that stuff like that as well. But in Chaos, it I was halfway through, I think, before I realized that one of the main characters is trans, and they kind of just, it's like, obviously in like ancient Greek culture, gay relationships were, you know, as normal as heterosexual relationships considered at the time. There was no kind of you know, distinction between the two, and it's kind of very much like that in this. It's really refreshing, and it's really just, you know, but it never at any point did I go like, all right, thank you, yes, you've ticked your box, well done, pat you on the head for your, you know, being so up and coming, you know, kind of thing. And I was like I say, I was like 5 or 6 episodes in before I thought, oh wow, they've actually delivered all of these, you know, kind of, you know, these things in this so much more refreshing way. They haven't just felt like they've just forced it down your throat and gone, right, this is what you must think now, kind of thing. And they did it so damn well, and all of the characters in it are great. And I mean, there's so many good actors in it as well, but the whole storyline is brilliant, and the whole it's sadly it's been cancelled after one series, which absolutely sucks. But in of itself, it's a really good contained story anyway. So
I'm excited. You've made me.
But Jeff Goldblum's brilliant because he starts off very Jeff Goldblum. He's like, oh hi God, you know, he's just that lovely way that Jeff Goldblum is. I cannot do a Jeff Goldblum.
Let's all try to do
running
Jeff
and the
Goldblum.
screaming.
You know, yeah. But then as he, you know, because he plays Zeus, and if you know anything about the Greek gods, they are the most giving and the most taking away of gods that have ever been in you know, written pantheons and stuff. And he becomes so dark at some points, but also so hilarious at other points, and it all sort of centers around him. And it's kind of like a narrator over the entire series, which is Prometheus, who is played by the guy who I can never remember his name. But you all watch Game of Thrones, yeah? Who was the guy who he was the older no, he was the Baratheon that had the ghost child with the red witch or whatever she was. That Baratheon.
Oh, Robert Baratheon.
Robert Baratheon. Yeah, not Ned's mate who dies, kind of thing. The other, the next Baratheon. He plays Prometheus in it.
Oh, it's not Robert is Ned's mate. It's Stannis.
Stannis Baratheon. That's it. He plays Prometheus, and he's fabulous in it. And yeah, it's just it did some stuff that I was just like, bravo. That was you did it so well. You know, like I say, shame it was. Oh well, hopefully it'll get picked up. It feels very much more Apple TV kind of thing. I can see Apple TV picking
aren't
it up.
that much better at just like dropping shows or forgetting about
they
shows. They're very...
Yeah, true, but they do stuff that's got a little bit of a classier edge to it, and this feels like it's got that classier edge. It does what it does very well.
I just can't believe they like got halfway through. They literally gave it like 4 weeks and went, right, we're cancelling this. And you've got to wonder how much money are they making by cancelling the show now? How much
well, I mean, some of the actors they got in this as well. I mean, Jeff Goldblum, the guy who plays Stannis Baratheon. Prometheus. Hades is played by, you know him as Remus, you know, the werewolf guy in Harry Potter. You know, very, very fabulous British actor. Whoever plays Hera, she's a brilliant actress, but I can't think of what her name is either.
Janet McTeer as Hera. You've got Killian Scott as Orpheus.
Who plays Poseidon?
It's
New Zealand
Cliff Curtis as Poseidon. Billy Piper is Cassandra. And that's the bit I went, oh.
Whoa.
I forgot Billy Piper's in it. Yeah, she's not in it as much as I would have liked.
David Thewlis is Hades, and Stephen Delane is Prometheus.
Stephen Delane is. I couldn't have told you his name or. But yeah, great actors in it, like great. And then there was a lot of, like I said, there's a trans actor in there that I didn't know before they transitioned and hadn't seen. I didn't recognize him now, and then the person that he spends most of his time with, who's kind of, I would say, the main character in a sense. Yeah, she's the main character.
So David
didn't
Thewlis
recognize her either. You know,
David Thewlis is the werewolf guy, and my favorite movie of his, weirdly enough, he plays opposite love interest Leonardo DiCaprio as Rob Glier.
What? I need to see.
Really? This is a very gay movie, but it's a very serious, you know, there's a whole bunch of like people who are persecuted for being gay, and like the penal code did terrible things to them, from like
that's what the movie's about. You mean?
It is. That's how the movie ends,
right?
Because it's a sad gay movie from the early '90s. But yeah, like he plays Roglier. Yeah,
like and
he is
so good as
absolutely,
Hades. He's so
the
good.
Sandman as well.
The interpretation of the gods is also really good. They do a really good job in Chaos of interpreting the gods.
It's just another series they're just getting.
So since we hit multiple things, Richard, I know you're a backer for Conquest Princess. Did you know that the Princess Zero comic book is inside the box that you have coming? It's included in the.
Anyway, tell me more.
I want you to read it, and I want you to get Luke to read it too, because if Luke cares about these things, there's like 13 archetypal stories that you can hit and so forth and whatnot. And I hit some of these things in the various ages of the universe for Conquest Princess. And one of them is a Greek myth age. And it is also all about beginnings and endings. So despite the fact it seems like a hard transition for you guys and self-serving pandering, for me,
this is like silk. This is silky butter. This is such a segue. Such a segue. Beginnings and endings.
Yeah, so it starts with Tartarus, and so I would like Luke to see, who's not a comic book guy. It
starts with Tartarus.
It does sort of start with Tartarus. Oh. The prologue is
as in the place Tartarus in Greek mythology.
It's this universe. The fashion versus version of Tartarus exists.
Nice. Okay, cool. I'm intrigued.
The fashion verse is a real thing. Richard, did you get the playmat? It is ridiculous. If you get a chance to see it or whatever it is insane. And in it, we do a illustration of what the timeline looks like with all its exceptions, and you should see it. It looks like the vascular system on a mutant. It is absolutely fantastic. But it gets us back to this point about beginnings and endings, and where you, as a board game producer, as a Netflix executive, and as a comic book person, you are all looking at trying to grab an audience with something that already exists to meet certain expectations. And so Netflix is wrong to chaos if people like it so much it is, but they are running a business based on an algorithm that says, this is what our pass fail for this is. And if you don't make what the pass fail is, we don't care how much money we've dumped into it or how much people love it. We are here for something to hit these numbers. And they also
Netflix does not subscribe to the sunk cost fallacy, do they? They are like, no, that's it. We've spent millions, don't care. Cancel it. It's not working.
But that's also what they're trying to train and shock their audience about, where HBO's internal studio is you get at least 2 seasons. Period.
Right.
We're gonna green light you and whatever it is.
It's such a shame. It's such a shame because like the majority of series that I know, unless they're like one-offs, like say Ted Lasso, that they decided it was gonna have a string. It was gonna have a string and a bow in the end, and they were gonna wrap it up in 2 seasons. But most shows that I know need a second season to get into.
But just like you said earlier, like people should have an idea where it ends. Like you can have the difference between a fantastic relationship that lasts a weekend and one that fills you with regrets is the one that lasted a weekend. It was exactly what it prescribed itself to be.
Speaking from experience. But that's why something like the Sandman on Netflix worked. Because it's an anthology of stories. Yeah. I mean, the fact is it just works for me, it just works because it is, you can watch single episodes, not necessarily in order, and you can still catch up with like every single thing that's kind of happening. So it's kind of what.
No, you can't.
And it's also why The Walking Dead ended up being so tortured and awful. Like this was supposed to be an anthology of stories. It was not supposed to be the odyssey of how I can hate Rick Grimes. Right? And I hate him so much. Oh my God.
Rick Grimes by the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it could have been other people who were going on this journey, like, but audience has this expectation, and people are terrified not to meet it or to challenge it. And then there's that business decision on top of it. And in the case of the comic books, and this is how all these conversations are colliding so simultaneously, you need a place for people to jump in or jump back in. Like, if you're going to have a serial something and get people excited, you should take the Magic the Gathering, like, not before, like, the recent history of, like, Overpublic, whatever it is, but a new jumping in point where people do not feel like they had to have caught up on the whole thing. This is why the new One Piece live action is so good. Like, you don't need to watch 1,400 anime episodes. Like, they're going to serve it up to you, the best parts of it, in a format that is more approachable to you. It doesn't require you to have all of the skills, and these are skills that you have acquired, to watch
on the
anime.
other side. I mean, I was explaining Absolute Batman to my wife, and she kind of went, but why do they need to change the story? Surely the Batman story is the Batman story, and why do they need to change the story? And I kind of, and I had to explain to her that basically they've been changing the Batman story forever. I mean, they've
or also telling the same one.
They've
14
retconned
different
it. They've retconned it. They sideswiped it. I mean, every kind of like it seems every kind of like, it used to be every 10 years, but now it seems to be like every 5 years they have like some kind of worldwide kind of crisis event, which means that everything kind of gets reset in the kind of the DC universe, and it just allows them to tell stories from kind of like a different perspective. And my example is like, stories change all the time. People kind of rework stories. It's like, okay, if you want to talk about, I mean, the latest one was the live action version of, was it The Little Mermaid? And people were like, "Oh, you've done this to The Little Mermaid," and I was like, "Okay, that's fine." And the Disney one, The Little Mermaid, yeah, and they actually, if you go back to the Hans Christian Andersen version of The Little Mermaid, it's very, very dark. She ends up dying in the end of depression. I mean, they changed the end of that story, so there's no kind of like, there's no sticking with this kind of the source material.
There isn't. And language is constantly evolving, and people will freak out the fact that language is evolving now more or it's slowed down than what it was previous. Like, we were discovering new things in the new world and interacting with new people, and language was changing, all this kind of stuff. This idea of codifying ideas that can only be a certain way, just like Luke was saying earlier, the idea of homosexuality, the modern concept of it, is very modern. Like, Greeks and Romans didn't have this idea of being gay.
No, it was
right?
Happy.
Yeah.
Like, we are adding labels and distinctions on top of these things, and language is slowing down, and we are codifying it because we need to get all 7 billion people on the planet on board with the same thing
very quickly, because the entire place is homogenized. I mean, speaking of languages, I am learning new languages at the moment. I've been learning Chinese.
Which flavor?
What flavor? I don't know. The main one.
Well, you think about Chinese.
They are
like
actually
29...
named after flavors, actually, some of them. As far as I'm concerned,
the flavors are named after the type.
I think it's my...
This is a joke that only an Asian person can make.
Chef's head. In my head, they are flavors. They're not provinces in my head.
I will tell you. I've been learning. Stop that. Dump that. Give me that. Give me this. It's Duolingo. I mean, it says...
The deal is, there's 29 languages that they made use the same spoken language and grammar, or written language and grammar, right? So if you think about, you should not think about Chinese as one language, but a host of languages forced into the same written language, so that the imperial provinces could put down one edict.
Well, I can't brag about that. I'm also learning Arabic as well. I just decided I wanted something different, and also something that was challenging.
So you decided you wanted to read languages that read top down, and then ones that
I mean,
read
I wanted
right left.
to,
You were just like,
it's kind of. You know, it's really funny, because if you look at obviously the spoken Chinese isn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. Arabic, written Arabic, is really easy to read. It's literally, it's
Really?
ridiculously easy to read. It is so, there's so many things which are so similar to kind of like written English, just handwriting, kind of non-cursive kind of.
I take it you mean written Arabic in Arabic, not written in the Latin alphabet, sort of translated into the alphabet.
No, I
and
mean,
then
I'm talking
written.
about written, kind of written out. Yeah, normally.
Is it
Are you
Aramaic?
talking about how easy it is to pronounce? Like you could read it out loud and
I
not
can read it. No, I
understand
can.
it,
I can
or are
read.
you
I
talking
can start
about
to kind of read stuff
understand?
and kind of read individual letters and individual sounds and stuff like that. And there's an awful lot of similarity between kind of like letters like R and D and even things like B. And there's like, you know, things like that which are like very very similar. Even like you can see where it's kind of come from. Why you can see kind of where that's come from and how it's like slowly transferred into kind of like, you know, there's obviously bits of the Arabic kind of alphabet which has slowly seeped into kind of like kind of English. So you get, and it makes it kind of relatively, yeah. I mean, it's a challenge, but I kind of looked at French and I looked at German and I looked at that and I went, I kind of got a rough idea of where I am with French and German, roughly. I want to go somewhere kind of like completely kind of different and completely new, and also something that kind of maybe tackles a part of my brain which I'm not using on a kind of like a day-to-day basis. So I've done like I'm on day I'm on day 44.
I was waiting for you to
That's
No,
say day
amazing.
two
no.
of each one.
I've done my streak. I'm up
How
to, where am I? Yeah, 40.
how language shapes how we think is a real
Yes,
thing. If you have not taken the time to read this study about, there's a native people in Australia who don't have a concept for right or left. They do everything by sun up, sun down. And what they did to test how that language then affects how they organize things. You should see the study. It's fantastic. Like people who inherently say east west instead of right left.
that's so weird.
I can't remember. I think it was probably Ricky Gervais. I think it was in his animal special. He said he was talking about that if if you took a lion and it could speak English, you could say the same words. We wouldn't be able to talk to each other because its language and its context just wouldn't make sense in that. If in that going to what you're saying is they don't understand left or right. That just there is no word for left or right. There's like, what do
Well,
you mean left or
Terry
right?
Pratchett
Kind of
talked
thing. And
about
it's that kind of.
like goats don't have a word for goat. They have, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, you know, saying Inuits don't have a word
Right.
for snow, kind of thing. It's like that kind of thing.
I
And there's also another,
when
yeah,
I'm
like
with all my colleagues through or from Poland, bar bar a couple of guys in America, almost all we do is talk about our languages. They ask me loads of questions about English, and I'm always so amazed at how good their English is. I tried to do Duolingo Polish, and I realized I was never going to get my Polish to their English. So I was like, whose time am I wasting? Theirs to try and translate my shit Polish when I try and do it, or me trying to learn Polish to some worthy degree. But yeah, we do loads of we talk about that sort of thing all the time because there's so many different like contextual things, and they'll say something and I'll be like, have I said that right? I'll be like, no, you haven't quite said it right because of past tense or this tense or whatever, kind of thing. So we there's but they'll often explain to me that they say it that way not because of a lack of learning, but because the way they would say it is that way, kind of thing. That's they would use that kind of
Well,
tense in
it's
that
like
way, kind
French
of thing.
when you get to higher
You
levels
know,
of kind of like French and German at high school, because I guess in America it's more kind of like you're more likely to learn Spanish.
you
Spanish
look
is probably the
Spanish,
main
don't you?
kind of
Probably in America.
second thing. But it's like once you get to like 5th and 6th year high school learning German, this or French, especially for French, you turn around and go, well, actually, I think you'll find if you're in La Rochelle in France, nobody's going to understand what you're saying because it's quite, you know, it's quite literally
Yeah.
like somebody from like, I don't know, somebody from maybe kind of like California walking into some place like, walking into the Mississippi or something like that. Or it's like somebody from Newcastle walking into some, a bar in Aberdeen. You know, you're not, because the local dialect, yes, you're speaking English. You think you're speaking English, but you're not speaking English because you kind of like got the local dialects and the local words and stuff like that as well. So it's that kind of thing, which is I always thought was kind of interesting.
That's why
My favorite version of this for the United States is Californian use of the word maybe, and Minnesota version of that same word. So, Richard, I ask you, and I'm a Californian, are you going to come to the thing? Like, we're going to play some board games. And then you say, as a Californian, maybe. And what does that mean, Luke?
Potentially.
No, incorrect. It means no. It means I am not going. Okay? So now, Luke, we're in Minnesota, and I ask you, hey, are you going to the thing? And you say, maybe, probably, or maybe not. What does that mean?
50-50.
No, it means yes.
I love it.
You wouldn't overassume or overcommit, but you would never say a flat yes. In Minnesotans will not. They're like, yeah, maybe.
I remember Dan. Do you remember on Sporadically Bored, Dan and Mike had this massive debate over the inference of quite nice or quite good. And Mike was saying, Mike Delisio, who obviously in America, Seppy, he meant that meant like very good, really good.
That's quite nice.
Like, whereas
yeah,
in England, I think Dan and certainly I was like, well, yes, it's all right. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's not.
Yeah.
It might. There's. I'm here with quite nice, and Mike was quite nice. Well, that's such a massive distinction. Like, in my sense, quite nice for me, in Mike's sense, would be no, that was really good, or that was some, kind of thing. That's where
we're gonna keep on this game. I'm gonna ask you again. Okay, I'm in Minnesota now, Richard, and I say that was interesting. What do I mean?
I don't think you like that.
Yes,
politeness.
It's the same context you would use for
that
is gross. Like, I have something foreign and strange, interesting. Like, we are now going to stop talking about
you live in interesting times,
right?
Okay, I think I would get that. It'd be based on the way it was said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, if somebody said to me, like, well, that was interesting. I mean, there's definitely an inflection there that says,
Like, so I am flat out. I just ask people, I'm like, actually interesting or Minnesota interesting? I have just flat out asked people that at this point, because I am from Detroit. Like, I just go name out. All right, next one. Now, this one is generational. Okay. If I asked you to do something, if I asked Richard to do something, Luke, and Richard said, I'm going to get right on that, what does that mean to young people versus what does that mean to people my age, especially military service people?
Well, I would say yes to all of us. That means you're going to do it. It's the next thing you're going to do.
That's young people. No, for people my generation, particularly military people, it means fuck off. I'll get right on that.
Oh, again, that's an inflection thing. Yeah, if you turn to it, I'll get right on that. I fully understand you are giving me the finger and you're telling me to fuck off.
I'm giving you the meaning of that, but if you said it in any way, shape, or form, right? You wouldn't be rude to, like, you'd be throwing it into someplace. Yeah, I'll get right on it. And it means fuck off. Like, it means, like, even without the inflection, it means fuck off.
Is amazing.
So I had to tell somebody.
That is amazing.
I had to help somebody out. They're like, they never understand. They don't trust me to do a thing. And I'm like, that seems weird. Can you take me through the exchange? And then they said, well, I had told them that I'm going to get right on it. And I'm like, you told this ex-military, like, combat vet person that you did this thing. And like, oh, yeah, he thinks you just told him to fuck off. And she's like, what? So this is, like, even words that we understand the meaning of, right? And this is the advantage of teaching Shakespeare. Like, we're getting back to why teach Shakespeare versus this other kind of stuff. The contextualization of, like, I understand the words and I understand when you say it and I can lift the meaning. That is a good skill to have. And we teach that skill by picking something that we all know needs this versus something that is like, an adult twist or an agenda or any of that kind of stuff. Like all the agendas in Chaucer and Shakespeare are all now so played out that we don't, it's just part of the fabric of the culture. But if you pick something like NWA, like that's still very relevant here in the United States.
I don't know the lyrics to any NWA songs. Can you help me out with those?
No.
Well, like, quite nice thing to go back to. Like, that's like I said, there's lots of those with the inflection. You get what you were trying to say, but if in that you could just say it both people could say it in a perfectly no inflection way. They just go, yeah, it was quite nice, And one of them, like, as somebody who loves to cook for people, you can imagine the difference in outcome. If some of them says to me, "I cooked them dinner," and as soon as they get out the front door, I'm gonna turn around to my wife. I'll be like, "You hear what that motherfucker said about my steak? Quite fucking nice. Who the fuck is he?"
And then I was never invited back again. You realise now,
yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
If I ever get into the situation where I end up in your house and you're cooking me dinner, I am guaranteed.
You're going to tell me it was quite nice.
I'm going to look at you.
Quite nice.
Right, I'm going to look at you right in there. I'm going to go like that and you're going to go, so how was that? I'm going to go, yeah, it was quite nice.
And I'll be like,
that's
US
where modern
nice,
words,
or I'll punch you in the face quite nice.
That's where modern phrases like meh is better, right? You're like, everybody understands from meh.
Yeah.
Do you know the interesting thing is with the way the internet's going and with us living in the fastest finger first kind of content kind of thing, which was, I was looking at some old kind of videos that I did, like just shorts and stuff like that. And one of them was using the little kid who was famous for 5 minutes talking about corn. Do you remember the one? He says, "It's corn. It's a big hunk with rocks. It has a juice." And you never heard, right?
I don't
okay.
remember that one. No.
And I was just like, and I kind of re-uploaded it back up, and I thought, this is gone now. This was like a year old, but this is gone. Nobody's going to remember this. Nobody's going to not know this. Nobody's going to kind of appreciate it. But it was such a kind of a great thing at the time. And then I listened to my youngest, who's going to be turning 12. Oh my God. He's going to be turning 12 like next Monday, and it's just scary. But all the things that he talks about, kind of the continual kind of vernaculars kind of changing all the time about what's cool, what's good, what's this, what's that, what's hip, what's hot, what everybody's kind of talking about. It's just keeping on kind of top of that. And it's just like, no, stop, speak my language. And it's incredibly incredibly difficult. He's on.
We've talked about this before, and this is all these topics are relevant. You've got to understand there's a time dilation between you and younger people. Like, they're experiencing time at a fidelity that is like, for me, I'm now thinking everything in 18-month cycles, right? Like, at a minimum, that's like when I was in college, that was a term, right? Like, it's a semester. Yeah. What was 3 months has now become 18 months at a minimum. It's
amazing. It's just so like true. We're now heading into, he's done his first couple of months at high school. And before we know it, he's going to be finished his first year. Before I know it, my eldest, she's going to be going into fourth year university. And I don't know where that happened. I don't know how that happened. I just, honestly, I'm sitting there going, how's she already done? I'm very, very proud of what she's done, because she seems to be kind of like sailing through it. She's doing awesome. Psychology. And as I say, my middle boy, he's almost doing his first like month and a bit of studying law. And I was like, "Oh, how's it going?" And he's like, "Yeah, fine." He says, "I bought a shirt the other day and I'm slowly turning into you." And I was like, "Yes." That's what we kind of need. Anyway, speaking of language, speaking of gaming, speaking of being in different locations and people, I wanted Luke, because we spoke about Essen, and I want...
Did we?
You didn't, because you weren't here, because you were busy. You were busy with your real friends, Seppy. You decided you didn't want to come along. So last time when I broke the mic, it didn't work. How was Essen, Luke? Tell us, how was it?
It was... I mean, I don't know how much you heard of it over other sides of stretches of water. But on the Thursday, the first day of Essen, it was also a national holiday in Germany. Yeah, so when you get those massive events like Essen, you usually get a nice build up. It peaks on the Saturday, and then you come in on the Sunday, all kind of geared up, and you're still full of Saturday adrenaline. And then you remember that actually it's almost chilled out, and you go, "Oh, that's a lovely little bell curve." But no, we just went slapped in the fucking face from literally 12 seconds past 10 o'clock when the halls opened. It was the only word to describe Essen was relentless. It was absolutely relentless. So obviously everybody had the Thursday off in Germany and all of that side of Europe, it seemed. And then obviously they all booked off the Friday as well. Because like I very naively at some point during the Thursday I thought, oh, well, okay, Friday will be like the Thursday. But then of course, and I realized later on, I was like, no, because I know what I do. I wouldn't be working on the Friday either, kind of thing. So yeah, Essen was fantastic, but it was insane, and literally every ticket by the end of Essen was sold out. They would not have allowed any more people in Essen.
How many people is that?
I want to say it's some. I had the number of 65,000 people in my head. Yeah, and I can't remember where I got that number or when I got that number, but that's the number I always had in my head. But
65 seems small for us.
No.
Yeah, well, no, that's...
It's a concentrated collection of nerds. Would you say, Luke, that it was almost relentless in...
No, I wouldn't, Richard. I'm better than that.
I'd like to ask this. We are so deep down the rabbit hole, but I generally, it's always a good exercise. Like for somebody who's not part of our industry and our culture, how would you describe Essen?
Well, the way I often do it is because I'll talk to parents at school drop off and stuff like that. They'll hear I'm going to Germany for a week or whatever, and I'll explain what I'm going to. And they're like, oh, and I always say like it's like there's two shows in the world for this industry, and they are both equally the biggest. And the way I always describe it to try and get some level of understanding as to how big Essen is I always describe that the first year I went, we had a booth in Hall 4, which was not on the other side of the convention from one of the front doors, but it was kind of like you couldn't walk much further back in one sense. And from one of the main doors, it took me 14 minutes to walk from that door to our booth. And when you think to just walk 14 minutes, and I was like, and I don't mean like, I just mean just walk generally. I wasn't trying to get there quick, or I wasn't like particularly held up by crowds, just general pace of walk 14 minutes, and I was like, that's a long way kind of thing, And then I think I said that the first day I was ever at Essen, I got to the end of the day and I'd done 48,500 steps. And it's just to give you some level of, that's the bit I try and let them understand is like the size of it,
Like how many halls are there? There's 7?
7. Well, 6. There's 6 halls. One of them is an entrance hall.
It says there was 204,000 people.
So they do it.
How many?
Do they do it by turnstiles or individual tickets?
It doesn't say.
I can never remember which one does which. Gen Con does it turnstile or whatever, and Essen does it the other way. And I can never remember.
So I think there's ones that's like it's like the number of people. I think you've got the difference between the number of people that went through the turnstiles and then the number of people that actually individual.
Yeah, counts, well, one of them counts how many people bought a ticket, whether that was a 1-day or a 4-day ticket. And then one of them goes how many people came through the gates, whether that was one person 4 times or one person 1 time, kind of thing. I can never remember which one counts it which way.
Gen Con does it by badges sold.
So there you go. So that would make sense that it's about 65,000 people then. Because I think, how big is Gen Con? Gen Con's about So if they're saying Essen 200 and something thousand people, or that's if you took on the average that a third of them will have a 3-day ticket. Oh, sorry, a majority of them will have at least a 3-day ticket, maybe a 4-day ticket. That would make kind of roughly sense that we're in that somewhere between 60 and 70,000 people.
And I'm going to read a quote.
And that's not including the staff. That's not including all the people that make Gen Con Essen happen. I mean, that's a lot of people. That are running booths and food huts.
Is this understanding correct? My understanding for Essen is that everybody has like much larger booths, and they're running either just walk up, buy a game, right? They're just a stall that you can buy, or they have a sit down. Like, hey, come play these games. You'll play the full game.
It's kind of that's the other thing that always surprised me at Essen is, like I said, when you go to UK Games Expo, and I think it's kind of the same at Gen Con and most conventions, you go to demo a game, like you're going to demo Conquest Princess, what I would imagine you would do is you'd walk them through like the first kind of 2 or 3 turns, you get them a really good idea of what it is, you give them the pitch, blah, 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 blah. With Essen, my understanding is that most of the demos, you sit down, you are taught the game, you play the game. You find out who won at the end. And that can be a 2.5-hour game. It's a 3-hour Euro kind of thing. And that's why there are always all these, you book in and people have got their, kind of slots to get.
Yeah, you're standing in line a long time for some of those.
Yeah, I mean, rarely you're not standing in line because usually it's a system. You're here for your slot, blah blah blah, and there aren't too many of them where it's a case of wait till you get one kind of thing. I think there are plenty of them though. So yeah, you get those booths where you got either lots of demo area or like a decent bit of demo area. Then you do get some people who are just a small one, some with stuff. Then you get some that have like a, kind of there's the ones that are selling the stuff and it's kind of like as you'd expect. It's like, here's stacks of our games, blah blah blah. Then you get some where it's like a little counter and they've got a warehouse of kind of little mini warehouse behind them. And then you've got, obviously Essen's massive for all the industry side of it, so you've got all these, like a lot of booths have meeting rooms in them and stuff like that. So I mean, like some of the booths are just insane, and I imagine it's very much the same at Gen Con. Some of them, like I remember I haven't actually seen Chip Theory. I haven't been there for the last couple of years, but I think the first Essen I went to, Chip Theory were there, and it was the first year they got this all singing, all new dancing, and I call it a booth. A booth is just such a ridiculous term for what this thing is.
Yeah, no, this is an installment.
Well, it was like a car showroom. It was like
it's a showroom.
I've walked into a Mercedes showroom and I would have thought less of it than I thought of the Chip Theory booth. It was beautiful. It was absolutely ridiculous.
They have 2 versions of that booth. They have a European version that stays over there,
right?
Because it's too hard to ship back and forth, and it just hangs out. And then they have a one in Fort Wayne that goes to the shows here in the United States.
Oh, of course, you work with Chip Theory a lot, don't you? Yeah, you know Chip Theory.
Yeah,
that was nuts. I mean, like, and this year, somebody said it was something to do with Asmodee's first year or something like that. I didn't know what they meant by it because they didn't mean what I think what they sounded like. Made it sound like it was Asmodee's first time at Essen. I was like, well, that's definitely not the case.
Well, Asmodee's got their new they got Middle Earth's rights to all the Hobbit and Middle Earth titles, and so this might be the year that those are putting forward. Well, I know,
like Cosmos and Asmodee basically had a haul.
Oh wow! I mean, Asmodee's most exciting title for this year was probably their oversized there and back again, their Hobbit Roll and Write by Reiner Knizia.
Or no, the one everybody was lined up for was the version of Seven Wonders Duel, Lord of the Rings. That was the line for that every day was massive. It was ridiculous.
But I'm not excited about that one. I'm excited about Ryan Knizia's Roll and Write.
I'm intrigued by that. I hadn't actually heard about that one, so I might look that up.
They did an oversized version where you could have this giant marker on a whiteboard, and I can see Richard with a marker bigger than his head, just trying to work the whole thing.
Marker bigger than my head. You're making it out like I'm some kind of lollipop. I wish I
you?
was. I used to be some kind of lollipop. I'm considerably. There's a considerably an awful lot more to love of me of late. I must admit. Did you get stuff? Did you get an awful? Did you get anything played then? I take it you must have got quite a few little snippets. Yeah.
Played?
No.
Fuck no. I was so busy. Not in a million years. No, not.
This is why I want to go to your. I know it's not called Highland Con, Richard.
Tabletop.
I want to go to your.
It's not difficult. It's Tabletop Scotland. I mean,
Tabletop Scotland, Highland Con, Tabletop Scotland. I want to go to Tabletop Scotland. So I could just play games.
I'm at a convention next week just to play games.
Is that it?
AC West in Telford. Yeah.
That'll be lovely.
Yeah, Aircon West. Yeah,
I want to.
Can't wait.
Tabletop Scotland. Absolutely. I want to. Yeah, you have to go to conventions. If you're industry people, you have to go to conventions just to either work or do.
Yeah, I mean, we had so many meetings; it was ridiculous.
But I don't think I would mind that. To be perfectly honest, I don't. I think, as I alluded to last time, if I was over somewhere and I was working, I think I would probably have a better time, because one of my first things when I go to a con is like finding my anchor points, as in knowing where set 3 or 4 main parts are. You know, where there's the drinks, there's the toilet, there's the exits, there's the demo tables. Do you know what I mean? Kind of what I'm looking for in a con. And if I knew I used to go in with work when we used to go and attend conventions. And I was absolutely in my element attending a convention, and we went to the NEC countless times. And one of them, I think I mentioned, it was the toy retail one. There was another one we just visited, we didn't attend, but there was a couple that was just online retailers that we attended, and it was fine because I was in one place, I was at the booth, I knew exactly what I was doing, and even though it was busy, I was kind of like centered in one place while the busyness was passing me by, kind of thing. So that was kind of cool. But I think I wouldn't mind doing that if I knew that. I wouldn't mind getting involved in something like that if I knew that it was going to be the case, that I knew where I was and I wasn't just floating about between kind of like different places. So
I'm terrible at spinning plates. So if you set me up to do one activity, and that activity should be demoing or like running events, then I'm good. But if I have to do events, then jump to a business meeting, and then I'm supposed to socialize with this group of people, and then I'm supposed to go do I get overwhelmed.
I don't know.
I get overwhelmed pretty quickly.
I think for me, like events like Essen, I feel like I am in my absolute element. It's just where I'm, I get to see everybody and and give lots of hugs and handshakes and stuff like that, and I love it. I think I'm good at what I do. Seppy would maybe disagree, probably, but
why would you say that? I literally started our conversation before we started like with compliments and like, what is wrong with you? What? Who damaged you, Luke?
Me.
Yeah, we're all pretty good. We're all pretty good at this.
But yeah, I like it because it's also. It's a chance. It's also a chance for me to show my colleagues why they keep me around. It's very easy. Not very easy. Obviously, not being in the office, you could easily imagine that every now and then they're like, "Why do we keep paying Luke?" kind of thing. It's very easy, that out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. So it's nice to be able to kind of show how I am with the customers and stuff, which I just love.
What are you going to go to first in the United States, Adepticon or Gamma?
No, Gamma, did you say?
I don't know about Gamma. Gamma seems a bit weird.
You should go to Gamma.
Gamma seems to be a bit weird, but I mean, I'm not every single thing.
Well, to be fair, I probably actually would like Gamma because it's essentially is for the industry, so it would be,
and content creators, Richard, have their own track.
Yeah, I know, but also good. At the same time, I keep reading stuff about Gamma where they kept kind of changing how you were getting access in Gamma. I don't know. I'm kind of approaching that part in my twilight years. Well, I'm kind of all over going somewhere as the content creator to kind of schmooze. I think I alluded this at Tabletop Scotland. If it had been like a couple of years ago at Tabletop Scotland, I would have been all about with business cards and handing it out and saying, "Oh yeah, we can do left, right, and center." Even the previous year, I was kind of like, I was kind of looking about. But I was kind of like this year, I was like even a little bit kind of like, I'll speak to 1 or 2 people and see what they're saying and see what they're doing. But I'm not kind of actively kind of trying to introduce ourselves to people, you know?
Well, this is the argument for you going to Gamma. You understand that if you're going to that show, it is you as your channel, and then you're going to see all these people who should know who you are, because you do a very good job, Richard, and people should know
I
about
think
your
they
show.
should know about I think they should know about the show as well. And I don't know. I like where it's kind of cruising at the moment. You know, I'm kind of not in that kind of, there's like it's kind of funny when you go and visit kind of groups and stuff like that where you're kind of actively trying to kind of be proactive in it, and now you're just like, nah, I'm just going to cruise along, and if people kind of like the stuff that we're doing, they will like the stuff and they'll kind of get in contact. And also, I was very, very aware of, you can get to the point where if you're chasing for review stuff, at some point you'll end up with far too many games to look at and try and review. And then I was talking to, I had a kind of quite cathartic conversation with Colin. Colin did about 6 or 7 shows at the very, very beginning of the podcast, and then things happened and just kind of like we weren't recording as much, and then we tried, and then kind of life got in the way. But he basically said, yeah, the show was fun, but what I hated was basically having to make sure we were playing stuff to talk about, which was exhausting because we're kind of getting into that place where we're getting sent kind of copies of games to talk about, and then you're like, all you're doing is like you're playing games to talk about them as opposed to kind of like playing games to.
And that
And
might
you're
be a
playing
game.
them
It might
once.
be a game you never even wanted to play. You got
Yeah,
sent
you
a
might only
review
play it
copy, and you were
once.
like, I probably wouldn't have bought it. I mean, you might find some hidden gems and some nice surprises, but it might be a game that you know, you're just like, well, I don't want this. You know, I don't care about whatever it is. You know, princesses and
the
conquesting
perspective
stuff.
of,
You know,
like there's legitimate content for finding new titles, and people are very excited about it.
Yeah.
And those people, those channels, but like, not every channel has to be about that. And just because you get a review copy does not mean you have to review it.
I think there's a little bit of a contract with that, and I think that my contract in terms of review copies is with the player as opposed to the publisher. That if somebody sends me a copy, it's up to me to create something about it, because I think the audience deserve to find out something about it, or in terms of like a little bit of fun. There's a review out just now for Wizards & Co. where I am absolutely horrible about that game, but it's all based around the premise because they've sent a game called Wizards & Co. to a channel called We're Not Wizards. So I've had a little bit of fun with that. You know, there's a picture of basically there's a picture of the game in the toilet. It was when it was shrink wrapped. I'm not right.
Did you pre-warn
No,
David
not
that
at
you were
all.
doing any of that?
Not at all. Not at all. He's gonna look at it. It's like I've actually put at the bottom of the review, because normally I put at the bottom of the review, I put kind of like the credits about who's written it and stuff like that, who's designed it, the designer and the artist and stuff like that. So at the bottom, instead of put designer, I've put should have known better. For, you know, saving the project artistically, and then Miguel Coimbra, who did a fantastic job in the art. But Wizards & Co. it's quite a fun game. But I mean, I just thought I'm just going to play with this a bit, because do you know what it's? You know how bored it can get just going, right, I'm going to write about a game, and then kind of like, let's write about the different mechanics, and then let's say what I think about these mechanics. And sometimes you're just going to kind of mix them up. So on the website, I've done like poems and stuff like that, or kind of like rhymes and verse and prose when
That's
it's like small stuff. But like the last thing is not being invited to their wedding, Dave Clark and Nick Wilford, because they, you know, obviously they created the game. I mean, let me just see. Yeah, I mean, the opening is bleak. It's morose. It's like the box is staring at me now. It's like a puppy that's made a present in the hallway in the dark and it's sitting there all innocently like nothing's happened. Then you'll get it for a cup of coffee with no slippers because the dirtbag stole them earlier that day. Then you go into the kitchen and on the way there'll be a squelch. Then you have to do that unsteady hop. I'm being taunted here. At the end, I understand why they call themselves Sinister Fish, because what kind of 2-bit outfit would send a game to me called Wizards & Co.? Clearly, they didn't read the label. Clearly, didn't bother listening to the podcast. Clearly, they're just doing this nonsense to taunt me. So here we go, a full Wizards & Co. review. You know, it's like...
That is...
But
that's
that's
amazing.
The question, and that was the thing that I kind of...
Normally, presents are nice.
But I was basically saying... I mean, there's a picture of it, like, on the review of a picture of it. There was an empty gaming table at like the board game night, so I've put Wizards & Co. right in the middle of the table by itself with nobody playing it, just the box. It looks like a kind of a pariah. You know, I've like the background to the game is long and mysterious, concerns treasure hunting, which can be simply summed up by the following. You're a friendless, tragic magic disaster, and you want money because the thought of actually getting off your starry backside and doing some actual work for a change seems to have eluded you. So grave robbery is. I mean, though, that's the entire. But it's like sometimes it's like having fun. And as I alluded to in our last conversation a little while ago, I think it was one of the questions. It's like I'm going back to actual critical writing in the board game industry. I think is dying a death. I think we're going full kind of TikTok short videos. There's a set amount, but I don't see any new. I mean, it's like you can go, okay, shut up and sit down. But recently,
I posited this example to some friends of mine who are in a sort of group chat on a daily basis. Most of them are in the industry, and I screenshotted this person on Facebook who added me as a friend, and I messaged him and said, "I'm really sorry to have to ask, but how do I know you?" kind of thing. Like, oh, I don't know you, blah, 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 but I make content and stuff. And I was like, fine, okay. So, added it. And then, so I sort of like thought, okay, fine, you know. So this person, every now and then, and it says on their Facebook profile, like content creator, something, very much intimates that they are a YouTuber or you know, that this is what they do. They also, you can't like add them as a friend. There's someone you can only follow, which I don't understand how you even do that on Facebook, but it sounds very much like I'm an influencer.
I've got influence.
And so this person, every now and then a post comes up on my wall and it's them with the box and the stuff on their gaming table. I've never seen them play in a game yet, just taking some pictures of it and a picture of it with them. That's all they do. I looked to see if they do anything else. They do that on Facebook and on Instagram, and I think somewhere else. And I was like, is that what we're classing it as now? Because I've been a content creator for years now. Then, you know, we're gonna call me a fitness influencer? No.
Oh, you are.
You know,
there is different people's content can take any shape, and one of them is me posing with the box. That is a thing for people. And understanding who the person is.
Who are you serving?
To a contrary example to Richard's example about writing critical, I've been asked to. I was in a written article last week about like the origins of board game industry in the Twin Cities, where somebody interviewed me and then they put it in like print. It was like the city pages used to be the local like lifestyle magazine. It got replaced by this, which is called Racket Minnesota. And so I was in there, and I wrote for Board Game Wire earlier this year, and I'm writing for BGG a designer diary to come out with Princess, which is too. So there's a real appetite for written language, but it is not as promoted and it's not as accessible as, hey, I'm pretty.
But you are pretty, and you need to kind of get over yourself a little bit.
No,
with just
Luke's the pretty one. You're the smart one. I'm the one who's just happy to be here.
He is the pretty one.
One for you and one for you.
Oh, we know I'm the looker in this relationship, Richard. And don't get missing. You know, I worked hard for these shoulders, bitch.
I feel like we've gone full circle, and we can
just. I mean, yeah, but no, that's my thing. As I say, I keep kind of like sneaking back and going. So who's doing stuff now? And I think the circle is slowly shrinking. And I think because people are saying, well, okay, so what I can do is I can either spend 8 hours of my time playing this and then writing something and trying to make it make sense, and actually mostly trying to make it entertaining and keeping somebody all the way to the end instead of like reading the first kind of 2 lines and then going, all right, I'm just going to read the end to see what you think about it. Which is what I try to do, is you got to craft it so that people just don't skip to the end and say, oh, he thinks it's good, great. Which is why I will never ever put a score at the bottom of a game. I don't understand it. I don't understand why Dice Tower do it, because I watched the first 2 seconds of a Dice Tower.
I'm so guilty of everything you're saying.
Skip to the actual end just to see like what did Tom Vassell think, you know.
But it will tell me whether I'm going to watch the rest of it or read the article.
Understanding how people read or consume.
If they all sit there and go, oh, it's a 7, I'll go, okay, yeah, it's probably like I thought it was going to be. But if one of them goes like, oh, it's a 9, and one of them says it's a 6, I'll be like, colour me intrigued. Why the difference?
I think you have to understand that, like, I'm gonna say that, and this is gonna sound strange, but I reckon that 70% of every person who's reading anything that I've written content on already has the game sitting on their shelf, and they are just looking for somebody else to confirm that they have dropped 50 quid or $50 in a game, and that they have made the right decision.
That's interesting. But Richard, you're an experience, right? You're going to write something for your audience who understand that you're an experience,
yeah, I'm like,
right?
I'm like a fragrance. I'm like, an expression. I'm like a kind of a color.
Yes, you are.
Almost like I'm like a rainbowy spectrum of critical kind of review. I want somebody going, and I want them to be kind of entertained, and I want them to kind of pick through it. It's really funny. I wrote a piece about Tuscany, right? And my piece about Tuscany was basically, well, how very dare you, Jamie Stegmaier, tell me that viticulture could be improved on, you absolute shyster. And basically saying that, like, viticulture, one of my favorite games, like top 2, probably top 3 probably now. How very dare you say that it could be improved in any way, shape, or form? And I kind of like, and I posted that on BGG, and people, oh my god, they didn't like that at all. They didn't like anybody. They was like, yeah, nobody likes that. No, this is a terrible thing. This review is like awful. I think the only reason they didn't like it is because it. And I'm really having fun with the reviews that I'm writing. But it starts off as, and this is like me reading, it's bedtime and it's your. But it basically says, Tuscany Essentials Edition isn't just more wine for your palate or even cheeky cheese board on the side. It offers an entire sub-menu of additional drinks and snacks that some might go as far as calling crass and invasive. I consider the whole affair rather insulting and horrific, if I'm being completely honest. And they didn't like that on BGG, did they? I found the entire review crass and insulting. I was like, all right, just get over yourself. But
I just remembered I wrote a review of BGG. Oh, it was for Firefly. It was
brave
soul. And I got torn a new one by BGG because I was not very complimentary. I'm sure it was for Firefly.
They are like the old school message boards, and that's where the roots of BGG are territorial.
I wrote a review on viticulture.
Going to have that reaction
for viticulture and said basically, like, this is one of my favorite games of all time. And people said, and somebody went, what? You can't find any fault with this game? The kind of the randomness of the first. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to write something completely polar opposite on Tuscany. And they're like, what? You do like this game? I actually needed to change the review because at the end it says, for others, it might be just another reason to avoid the game, as the complexity onion is given just one more layer to make your eyes water. I wrote that line. I'm very proud of it. Ultimately, though, it took a game I liked and told me I was wrong, that it could possibly be improved on. And so with that being said, I hate this game and everything it stands for. And people didn't understand that. So I needed to put in brackets at the end, after that. I like this expansion and everything it offers. I was going to you thick bitches, but then that's for the BGG crowd.
Like reading for skim readers, or like writing for skim readers, or like the kinds of reactions people will have. Like,
I think some people
it's
go
definitely
in
a thing.
their anger.
I've written quite a lot of reviews on BGG. I didn't realize
Why
I
weren't
had
you
so many.
Wow.
But yeah, my Firefly review is called Anticlimax in Cardboard Form. It kind of says why and they did not like that.
We're gonna have to set. We're gonna have to. Do you know what? You're gonna have to search them.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man. Was the first reply. Yeah, you've just read an opinion piece. Well done. Yes, you are correct. That is my opinion, knobhead.
So amazing.
That's I think.
I don't want to
encourage.
encourage. Don't incite riot, Luke. Don't
I think
incite riot.
I want that though. I want people to feel something instead of like just reading a piece and going, yeah, okay, well, that's a definite. I don't want people walking away and going, that's a definite 7 out of 10. I want people walking away and going, well, that was entertaining, and I'm glad I spent the 6 or 7 minutes kind of reading that, or I'm glad I know more about what this person thinks about the game, or even people that go further and go, well, if they like the game, then I'll probably like that game as well, because we've kind of got sufficient taste. I just don't.
You also have the priority, whether or not the person agrees with you, they should be entertained having read the experience that you've given them. And I can understand where you're like interacting, like gaming has doubled in size. And whenever you have a large influx of new people, you're going to have like getting back to absolute Batman, absolutely, like you're going to have to start them up again. You're like, hey, this is who I am. And this is what it is about.
I don't know. I really enjoy writing. I really enjoy writing. I've got potentially a piece coming out somewhere, and if it doesn't, then it's going to be on the blog, because it's one of those pieces. You know, you write something or you produce something, and it just all comes together. Like sometimes I can spend like 7 hours writing a review, and it's just like every word is quite literally me crying between kind of typing because it's so painful to do. And then other times you kind of like sit down and you'll be like Jessica Fletcher in Murder She Wrote, and you'll be like din 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 din, take that, din 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 din, and you're just like you'll be like that 1,000 words, and I've now got to edit it down a bit because I've just written, and it's just been an absolute kind of joy to do it. Yeah, so that's it. So that's my continual thing to say, that written reviews are dying, but I just want more critical people. I want more critical people in the space. I want more people fighting the consumer battle, I guess.
There are a lot of people who are excited about the written word, right? They're, books as a thing, and there are people who would rather read things than listen or see things, right? And those people will never go away. But that audience used to be more front and center when blogging was a bit of a deal, but now things have sort of progressed, and blogging is not as forefront as it used to be.
It's just one of those things. Right. True. I want you to tell me, because I'm very conscious of the time.
Yes.
Well, you've got the rest of the day because you're young. Yes.
Am I? I think I'm older than you, Richard.
No, you're not. I'm 50 this year.
I think I am.
Are you?
So I was at a convention and I had a D&D off, like, when did you start playing Dungeons and Dragons? And I was like, 1979.
Wow. I'm like Negasonic Teenage Warhead now. I'm like, fuck, you're old. Oh my goodness.
So like, yeah, like I've been out longer than Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering.
Are we keeping you up, Grandad?
Yeah, it's almost 3:00. It's night. It's nap time.
Time for my meds.
Yellow in your meds.
It's always time for my meds.
I'm shipping Conquest Princess this week. Right, okay, let's get you to bed, Granddad. It's like
all I heard is Luke is going to give me a spell bath. That's fine.
Happily.
I know that. No, I just want to know what you wanted to get, what you're thinking about getting to the table to play. Do you get to play games, Seppy? Would you like to play a game?
I have a game sommelier who says, Seppy, you need to be playing this game because this game is incredible and it will inspire you. So I have literally somebody whose job is to go through all the hotness and get me down the table, because I'm as bad to teach games as you would think.
I don't know. I can think a lot. It's absolutely so
I'm
bad.
terrible. I cannot be told the rules. I'm like, if this game is any good, I should be able to figure it out. This is all I do.
I can't even spell Twilight.
I live games. Like I should like, this should all be intuitive. Amazing. Like I don't care if I lose, right? I mean, I make games for a living. That's literally the definition of making games.
And yet somehow you've not answered the question. What you want to get to the table? Yeah.
What do I want to get to the table? We're working on, and I've been very, very, very excited about this. The follow-up to Mouse Cheese Cat Cucumber has been consuming all my playtime. It's called Kaiser Cucumber and the Gangs of Mechanical Corners.
Absolutely, just so you.
Seppy will always be so just Seppy. So Seppy.
It's so epic.
Unashamedly and unapologetically, and that's why we love it.
The Hungarian and Chinese versions of Mouse Cheese are coming out probably in 2025.
Busy year.
So yeah,
busy year.
Yeah. So yeah, I had to prove Hungarian language versions for print this past week for Mouse Cheese Cat Cucumber.
See, you're just getting it done. You're making games, so I'm doing, nothing. Look, what about you? What are you hoping?
I know you're doing a lot of things. You're writing blogs. You're keeping up your podcast. All these funny things. You're making sure your head doesn't get any larger.
I'm doing that.
Like failing in the last
I'm doing
one.
that whole tape around the head thing. Do you know what I mean? I look like Madonna at the moment. The extra kind of, it's like somebody strapped fillets of chicken to my face. I'm getting that whole cheek thing. Look, what are you looking at playing? What are you looking at getting to the table?
So obviously, like I said, got the convention next weekend, and we've got like a few things planned. I'm going to play Andromeda's Edge, which is a lovely big juicy game. I meet Lou Glory as well at Essen, which was really nice. He's a lovely guy, really nice guy. It was Ponzi Scheme, which Mark just released for Bright Eye Games. I played the original once, and that was really good fun. So I really want to play that. I want my mate Andrew to teach me Senjutsu.
Oh, that's a game with many different kind of boxes as well, isn't it? It's one of these.
Arena kind of combat-y kind of thing, but real cool, feudal Japan kind of style about it. What else? That same person, he's running like 2 sessions for D&D at the conventions. I'm doing one of those, which I'm really looking forward to. More Oathsworn. And I just managed to get a second-hand copy of a game I've been desperate to get hold of for a long time called Castel. It's all about the towering Spanish people. So I managed to get a copy of that. So I'll be taking that to the convention as well. And me and Elliot I just managed to also pick up on eBay a copy of Quaxer Quedlinburg. Me and Elliot are enjoying that. Yeah, it's great fun. Yeah. So yeah.
That sounds like such a good. You need to come. Obviously, we'll coming back on again to have a chat about that. Myself, I'm looking at Sankore, learning that. That's Osprey Games. We spoke about that last time, but I haven't had a chance because I was on holiday.
Oh, yeah.
Near Loch Long and Loch Lomond in a cabin in the woods, which was incredibly fun. Also looking at Forges of Ravenshire from BA Games and eventually Star Trek Ascendancy, which I'm not proud, but I'm just trying to get to the table and it's not happening. It's a big long one.
As my love of Star Wars Rebellion, I think I would probably really like Star Trek Ascendancy.
I think the major difference between the two of them is the fact that one of them is a majority 2-player game. Rebellion's a 2-player game, which is going to be so much easier to get to the table and whittle away an afternoon, which is what I did with my boy. Whereas Ascendancy is going to require a third wheel, which is a slightly trickier,
at least,
to kind of get organized.
Is Ascendancy the 4X
yes.
Star Trek game?
Yeah, it's I mimic it to Rebellion because it's the one where it is Star Trek. It's everything you want from Star Trek. If you love Star Trek, it's your orgasm.
It's
of
got
cardboard.
everything. It's got the little ships. It's got the planets. It's got all the characters. It just, it's like somebody was going to play this and they're going to absolutely love it. And it's just kind of getting it played and kind of getting it absolutely loved. I will, of course, be playing more. I managed to play Joyride again, which is incredibly good fun again.
I had a very good chat with Mr. Malloy.
I'm glad.
Essen. I had a proper meeting with him, and then I went and also had a chat with him at the booth. And he very kindly, he was very sweet. He said, "Oh, I've got a spare, like, all-in box. If you want to take it home with you." And I was like, "That's a big old box, Duncan." I said, "I will come back on Sunday if I've got space." And I was like, as soon as I saw my bag with the few bits I had picked up, I was like, "There's no way I'm getting that Joyride." It was very, very kind of him to offer. He's a lovely guy.
It's just incredibly really good fun. The other one is More Flesh and Blood. It's just phenomenal. You want to sum up Flesh and Blood, like one game I was playing as an orc, smashing people about the head with an axe or try to fight. The next round I was playing as it was playing against somebody as using ninjutsu with combo punches and kicks and stuff like that. It's such a good game, and everybody should be shouting about it and kind of giving it kind of extra love. And I was using my buy the same tokens to make it all look blingy, and I got some mats recently to make it look fantastic, and so I'm hoping to get that. Yes,
that's the CCG, right?
Good. It's so good. But the other thing is, I'm planning to get GKR heavy hitters to the table, and that's going to have.
I'm picking up a copy of GKR Heavy Hitters at AC West.
What's that? I don't know this.
It's the one that was made by Weta Workshop, and it's these big stompy robots trying to
take each other out,
really
tag buildings. What are you getting? Are you just getting the base game, or are you getting anything else that they're giving you?
I think it is, but it's like the deluxe. It's a slightly deluxified base game.
You'll have absolute fun. So, if you want to find out what's happened once we've played these games and had a conversation, and you want to hear that conversation, then the next time we'll get together, we'll probably have a conversation about it. But I am thinking potentially the next time we have a conversation is involving potentially Mr. Dan Hughes and Mr. Mike Delisio, because I think they're coming on to talk about I Made You a Mixtape. I made you a mistake. I made you a mistake. But apart from that, then when we'll come back, that'll give us more time so we can talk about the games that we just mentioned just now. When we've mentioned, we obviously got to say hello to Jamie at Mox in the Hole, because we always say hello to Jamie at Mox in the Hole, even though he's not returning my calls. It must have been meeting me face to face at Tabletop Scotland that must have put him off. But there you go. That's one of these things. If you've listened along to tonight and you like what you've listened to, there's a couple of ways that you can help us. Tell other people about us. We're not COVID. If we spread, it's all just laughter and fun and sunshine. It's not coughs and colds and lying in bed forever. That's basically what it is. If you want to hear more about wonderful Seppy, then go and search for Fight in a Box. You will find him. He's spread like butter. And if you want to hear more about us, then go to your podcast catcher of choice and search for We Are Not Wizards. And you will find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all these other wonderful things. And if you do like what you've listened to, then give us a rating or review and tell other people about it. And if you want to read those words, which I was quoting directly from the page tonight, go to wearenotwizards.co.uk, because it helps to stroke my ego in all the lovely places. But there's only one more thing to do. And it's a goodbyes from everybody. So it's a goodbye from Seppy. Say goodbye, Seppy.
Goodbye, Seppy.
It's a goodbye from Luke. Say goodbye, Luke.
Goodbye, Luke.
It's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful, and
stay spicy.
So spicy.
Until the next time. Goodbye.
I suppose Seppy hasn't hung up yet. He's just gone, bye.
Jazz time. It's time to get jazzy. It's time to get crazy. It's time to get magical. Thanks for listening, you crazy cats. Thanks for listening and tune in till next time for Wizard FM.